In a marketing meeting with the head of womenswear when someone from marketing asked whether we should lean into sustainability for the next catalogue. She said, probably best not to go down that narrative. Sustainability wasn't a value, it was a narrative, a theme, something you leaned into or you didn't, based on what was going to sell. And that was my light bulb moment. It wasn't shocking, it was expected. And that's just how it works. Everything since then has just proven me right. I spent years working as a womenswear and textile designer at one of Australia's largest department stores. And before I did that, I did an internship at WGSN. If you don't know what WGSN is, and most people don't because that's kind of the point, it's a global trend forecasting agency. Brands pay tens of thousands of dollars a year to access it. My job there was to essentially use the website to build trend packs for different brands, then go out with the sales team and present them to design teams of all the top brands with head offices in Melbourne. On one of those trips, I met a womenswear buyer, and that contact helped me get my next job. So I went from packaging trends and selling them to brands to then executing those trends for brands. I didn't just work in fashion, I was passed along the conveyor belt of fashion. And at every single step, I got to see how the machine worked, which is why I can say this with full confidence. The trend cycle is not an accident. It's definitely not culture happening organically. It's a machine, and it's designed very deliberately to do one thing: extract as much money from you as possible, for as long as possible, by making sure that you never quite feel like enough. To understand why fashion feels so broken right now, you have to go back to when it wasn't broken. Think about the gigot sleeve or the leg of mutton sleeve in the 1890s, or the flapper dresses in the 1920s. These weren't just popular, they were inescapable. They were era-defining silhouettes. And you couldn't opt out because there were maybe 3 or 4 gatekeepers deciding what fashion was. A handful of Parisian couturiers, Vogue, department store buyers. And if Charles Frederick Worth said the gigot sleeve was a thing, it was a thing. And this inescapability is what made those silhouettes era-defining. When an entire culture is wearing the same thing, it becomes a cultural artifact in a way. It means you can look at a photo from 1890 and know that it is 1890. But can you do that with a photo from 2019 or 2023? Not really. And that's not an accident either. At some point, the fashion industry realized that it couldn't really leave trend cycles to chance, because in a way they were leaving money on the table by doing that. So it built an infrastructure to manufacture them. Now, WGSN exists 18 months ahead of where we're standing right now. Their analysts are watching street style in Tokyo, runway shows in Milan, cultural shifts in music, art, politics, and packaging that all into reports that tell brands what people are going to want to buy next season. Notice I said what people are going to want to buy, not what people actually want. Those are two different things. The job is to create desire and to manufacture a feeling of need when none actually exists. And I was part of that. I made those trend packs. I walked into those meetings and I told those buyers what they wanted, what they should stock, and what they should push. Here's something that never gets talked about. At the department store I worked at, buyers flew overseas to the Northern Hemisphere, London, Paris, Milan, New York, LA, and came back with samples from high street brands. Sandro, COS, Arquette. It depended on what the brand DNA was that you were working on. The kind of brands that felt aspirational and expensive to the Australian market. Now, we as designers, textile designers, garment technicians, product development assistants, jobs that I did, we studied those samples, we cut swatches for color references, we took off trims to get them sourced exactly, and then we did something called de-speccing. De-speccing is essentially where you take things off a garment to reduce the cost price. So then you can make as much profit margin as possible. It's taking out a lining, it's taking out details from the back because the customer only sees it from the front on the hanger. It's reducing the quality of the fabric. It's cheapening the fiber content of the fabric used, usually with more synthetic fibers instead of natural ones. And then we'd remake them cheaper, faster, and then sell them to the Australian market. About 6 to 8 months later, than the Northern Hemisphere. And the world wonders why Australia is so far behind the rest of the world when it comes to fashion. It's because as a society, what we have in store is actually already 2 seasons old from what was in the Northern Hemisphere when the buyers went on their buying trip. And then there's what happens at the other end. When John Galliano, one of the most visionary designers of his generation, is appointed creative director of Maison Margiela, that's extraordinary. But when fast fashion, Zara, absorbs prestige talent like that, it's not because fast fashion is getting better. It's because the machine is laundering itself, borrowing design credibility, couture credibility, making the whole system feel more legitimate than it is. The machine doesn't just copy the clothes, it consumes the people as well. Okay, this is one particular aspect of the fashion industry that really pisses me off. Did you know that there is no governing body that decides what a size 12 is, what a size 10 is, what a size 24 is? No regulation, no standard. Every single brand invents their sizing range, their sizing chart from scratch. They choose their base size, which is usually a size 10, and then they grade up to a 24 or 26 or 28. And then they grade down to a 6 or a 0 or whatever it is. And I know this because it was part of my job. I was a garment technician at another brand. And the thing is, people can get so affected by shopping for clothing, thinking that their body is the problem, feeling like you're in between sizes or your body's not right because it's not fitting a certain garment right. But you're not. The sizes were invented. And even in some brands, it's done on purpose to select a particular group of people. So if you go into a shop and you're a mid-sized girl like me, you're kind of a 14 or a 16 or a 12, there are particular brands that are created to segregate you and not allow you within their brand DNA. It begins with K and sounds like schmukai. So these sizes were invented, and they were invented inconsistently across thousands of brands with no accountability to anyone. And a cynical person might suggest that a woman who never quite fits will keep looking until she finds something that fits her. And I'll let you draw your own conclusions from that. Essentially, the whole business model of the fashion industry requires your dissatisfaction. That's not a side effect. That is a product of the machine. That is a core purpose of the machine to keep you buying. So that's the machine before it existed within social media. Already pretty grim if you ask me. And then the internet happened and everything got so much worse. And also, weirdly, so much more chaotic in a way that sometimes works against the machine. Social media didn't just speed up the trend cycle. It completely broke the conditions that allow trends to exist in the first place. Era-defining silhouettes require cultural consensus. Everyone needs to be looking the same, wanting the same thing, going to the same places, and all at the same time. And we just don't have that anymore. Right now, simultaneously, you've got cottagecore, mob wife aesthetic, clean girl aesthetic, dark academia, coastal grandmother, balletcore, quiet luxury, all running in parallel with each other. And none of them taking over from one another. There is no dominant silhouette. There's just thousands of micro aesthetics coexisting in the same feed, which sounds like freedom, but isn't really freedom. It's just exhausting. And here's something I've been thinking about a lot lately. The comment section of posts on Instagram has become the new trend arbitration space. In the past, a trend arrived and you either adopted it or you didn't. Now a trend arrives and you immediately see it in real time, whether people are rejecting it or accepting it, before you've even formed your own opinion. And we've all done this. You see something you like on Instagram and you instantly go to the comment section and you're not just reading opinions, you're doing these lightning fast credibility checks. I'll pick bio, follow account. Is this person fashion coded enough to make their opinion matter? The most liked comment becomes this crowdsourced authority. And it looks like democracy, but the majority of the time it is the person who was there earliest or who says something that everyone else is thinking. And celebrities have more pull in this ecosystem, but it's not the same as it used to be. They don't direct the trend cycle anymore. They kind of just trigger a comment war. Half the people are saying, stunning, you look amazing. And the other half are saying, that's so 2012, cringe. And it's also orchestrated by the big brands, choosing celebrities, picking aesthetics at particular times of releases of other products. It's just completely all orchestrated together to ensure that you spend the most amount of money, not just on the brand the celebrity's wearing, but then other connected products and other connected brands, maybe TV shows or movies coming out or particular foods that they release at Erewhon supermarket. What you end up with is trends that arrive pre-contested. The backlash just comes already without anybody getting a chance to see whether they like something or not. The gigot sleeve would be turned into a meme within 24 hours if it came in 2026. This all brings me to something that I think is genuinely new. There's been a total inversion of what it means to follow trends. 20 years ago, following trends meant that you were fashionable. Now it means that you're naive. It means you fell for the machine, for capitalism. The most sophisticated cultural position right now is ironic distance. Knowing about the trends, being aware of them, but visibly not doing them. But here's the thing, opting out is also a trend. Slow fashion, vintage only, capsule collections, buy nothing. All of these positions circulate through exactly the same trend cycle. And they generate the same comment sections. They produce the same social proof dynamics. You cannot actually escape the machine. You just kind of like relocate to a different part of it. Participating feels basic. Opting out is also a form of participating. And the comment section is going to find you either way. The awareness of the machine has become the aesthetics. The fragmentation, the comment wars, pre-contested trends, the ironic distance, the constant noise. It all adds up to something I think everyone is feeling right now, regardless of whether they care about fashion or not. Decision fatigue. We are all absolutely cooked. There are too many opinions, there's too many options, too many things to have a position on. Everyone is so quick to disagree, to call something out, to claim something's problematic or basic or over. Fashion used to be fun. Getting dressed used to be enjoyable. And now it's just a bit of an exhausting minefield. And a fatigued, overwhelmed person goes for the easy answer. They default to whatever's easiest, whatever aesthetic has the most liked comments, whatever the algorithm serves them next. So you're just never not a customer. Now, I want to be careful here because I don't want to immediately tell you that opting out is automatically virtuous, because I don't necessarily think it is. Secondhand clothing hauls, I see this all the time. And I get it. Someone buys 15 things from an op shop, comes home, films it, and there's zero guilt because it's secondhand, right? But the habit is identical. The dopamine hit is the same. The relationship to the garment, to the object is the same. You own it for a season and it goes back in the pile, almost with even less of a thought about it because it already was secondhand. Buying secondhand doesn't automatically make you conscious. It can kind of just be fast fashion with the cleaner conscience. And making heaps of clothing isn't automatically conscious either. And here's the thing that nobody in the sewing community really wants to talk about: the fabric. Because yes, you can make a garment from scratch, put 20 hours into it. And if the fabric was $2 a meter from a fast fashion fabric supplier, if you have no idea what the fiber actually is or where that fabric was made, what conditions it was produced in, you've just kind of made fast fashion with extra steps. Fiber content matters. Origin matters. How a fabric was made and by whom it was made matters. And that's a conversation the making community kind of avoids because, yeah, it's uncomfortable and it makes the whole thing kind of more complicated. But it's the conversation we need to have. The thing that's actually different and the thing that I think is countercultural isn't necessarily what you buy or what you make or what you avoid. It's your relationship to the object. Whether you're consuming it or whether you're authoring it, whether you're disposing of it or whether it's actually growing with you. And that distinction is how I ended up here. I want to go back to that marketing meeting for a second. When I heard that my boss thought sustainability was just a narrative, yes, I was outraged, but mainly I was just tired. I'd been commuting for 3 hours a day, leaving home at 7 a.m., getting back home at 7:30 p.m., spending my days designing for a machine that I'd started to see very clearly. And something in me just broke. And I thought, I cannot keep doing this. So one long weekend, I set up my old dusty sewing machine that I hadn't used since I was at fashion school. I started sketching a blouse and I went from there. No toile, no plan, just a piece of cream, crinkled cotton, and a design in my head. Puffy sleeves, a wrap tie waist, and a high neck. And I called her the Audrey blouse after Audrey Hepburn. And I remember I shared the whole process on my personal Instagram, just on my stories. And I have never had so many friends message me saying, oh my God, I've never seen something made from scratch before, from design all the way to a finished garment. Friends are saying you should start your own brand, which I just batted away because I used to say all the time that I've got plenty of time. The average age of a fashion designer is 42. I used to say that all the time to people when they asked, why haven't you started your own label yet? Blah. I said, I've got plenty of time. It was basically my way of not having to think about it. But after I made that blouse, a few friends asked me if they could place an order. So I set up a PayPal, a website, and registered my business name all in one weekend. Then I bought a little black book and I titled it, How I'm Going to Make This Work. So while working as a designer, I was making 7 to 8 garments a week of this Audrey blouse. And then on my lunch breaks at work, I would run down to the post office and post out all my Audrey blouses. I was just making all sorts of things. I made aromatherapy heat packs and a baby headband for my work friend, anything. And then I started educating myself on fast fashion properly. Articles, documentaries, podcasts. I just couldn't stop. As soon as I realized I was part of the machine, I couldn't unsee that. I couldn't unknow that. And I was part of the buying machine as well. I was buying 1 to 2 to 3 new pieces of clothing a week. I never checked where it was made, what it was made from, or who made it. So over Christmas in 2019, I made the call. I walked in after the Christmas break, sat down with my design boss, and I said, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And he said, well, it looks like you've got your mind made up, so I'm not going to offer you a pay rise. Just go for it. And when I told people I was leaving, I thought everyone was going to say, you're crazy, what are you doing? But the majority of people just said, it's about time. So here's what I built instead. And I want to walk you through it as a direct response to everything I've just talked about, because I only think it makes sense in that context. The industry needs you to feel like you don't fit. I share pattern making tips on how to make things fit you better and how to tailor the pattern to your body, because I believe you should have clothes that fit you well. The size was never the problem. The machine of the industry was the problem. And beyond my sewing patterns, I share as much free fashion, fabric, fiber knowledge as possible with you guys on my Instagram. I talk about fabrics and fibers, what they are, the history of them, where they come from, how they're made, about fashion history, about how the fashion industry actually works from the inside, because education is the whole point. The more you understand as a consumer, the harder you are to manipulate. And that's not a side effect of what I do. That is the reason why I do it. The industry cuts you off from the object the moment you buy it. It arrives, you wear it a few times, it falls apart, you throw it in the bin. What I do and what I sell is about the entire process. Choosing the fabric, the weight, the drape, the color, the pattern, the hand feel, choosing the trims, adjusting the pattern to your preferences, learning why a sleeve sits the way it does, what is the history of that particular design. And then when something rips, because it does rip, it will rip, learning to mend it. We've lost this connection between ourselves and objects where we look after them and we value them. It's about building a relationship with what you wear that deepens over time. The industry wants you to depend on it. I teach you pattern hacks to use on my existing patterns for free, so you can find even more ways to utilize that pattern for you and your wardrobe. I answer DMs. I do free tutorials. I'm reachable in a way that the industry structurally cannot do, because if you felt genuinely supported and cared for, you actually might stop buying. The industry exploits the people who make your clothes. That's how they are able to sell clothes for that price. I'm trying to teach you to be one of those people, because once you've really sewn something for yourself, like really made it, put the hours into it, made every decision about it, you cannot look at a $10 top in a fast fashion brand without feeling something totally shift. You know what went into it, and therefore you know what corners got cut for it to cost that much. The fashion industry has spent a century dismantling the relationship between a person and what they wear, because that relationship is bad for business. A person who understands how a garment is made, who made it, what it costs in time, labor, and skill is so much harder to manipulate, to buy things, harder to sell to, and so much harder to keep in a cycle of manufactured lack. They need you to not know how it works. And I'm going to keep telling you. If you want to start somewhere, my Audrey sewing pattern is a great place. It started as a blouse that I just made in my back room on a long weekend, and now it's a sewing pattern with 36 design options for $35 Australian. It's designed for real bodies. It comes with a full video tutorial on how to make it, and I'm in the DMs if you get stuck. If you want to go deeper on any of this, the research, the things that didn't make the edit, I've been writing over on Substack as well. I'll link that. Thanks for watching.